On July 30th, 2025, the world's attention turned to Stockholm, a city long synonymous with peace and diplomacy, a place where history has often been shaped by dialogue rather than conflict. Now, it was hosting a pivotal nuclear negotiation that would test the limits of international cooperation. The Iranian delegation entered not as hopeful aspirants, but as a nation that had quietly crossed the nuclear threshold, without ever officially declaring it to the world. This was a seismic shift in global security, a moment that sent shockwaves through capitals across the globe. Tension filled the air as Iran's negotiators, silent and resolute, took their seats, aware that every move would be scrutinized. The world was now forced to confront a new, undeclared nuclear power, one that had changed the rules of the game. Years of sanctions, painstaking diplomacy, and covert operations had failed to prevent this moment from arriving. Iran was no longer pleading for a deal, it was negotiating from a position of undeniable strength, its confidence unmistakable. The old rules no longer applied. The familiar playbook had been thrown out. The question was no longer how to stop Iran but how to manage a nuclear-capable Iran that refused to admit it, complicating every diplomatic calculation. This ambiguous status upended the balance of power in the Middle East and challenged decades of painstaking non-proliferation efforts, leaving allies and rivals alike scrambling to adapt. The Stockholm talks weren't just about uranium or centrifuges, they were about rewriting the rules for a more dangerous, unpredictable world. Every gesture, every word was loaded with meaning, as if the fate of nations hung in the balance. For the US and Europe, the goal was to regain oversight, to restore some measure of control over a rapidly changing situation. For Russia and China, it was a rare chance to expand influence and shape the outcome to their advantage. For Israel and Saudi Arabia, it was existential, a matter of survival, with stakes higher than ever before. The world watched with anxiety, knowing the outcome could mean fragile stability, or catastrophic conflict that could ripple far beyond the region. The real surprise wasn't Iran's willingness to talk, but the bold terms it now demanded, reshaping the entire negotiation. The stakes had never been higher, and time was running out for a peaceful resolution. Stockholm became the stage for a new nuclear reality, a turning point that would echo for generations. The world's future would be shaped by what happened next, as leaders weighed choices that could define the century. A non-declared nuclear power is a nation believed to possess nuclear weapons, but never officially confirms it. This deliberate ambiguity lets countries avoid the penalties of open nuclear status while still reaping the benefits of deterrence. Israel is the classic example, never confirming, never denying, but always signaling. This policy has deterred adversaries without sparking a full-blown arms race. Now, in 2025, Iran has joined this shadowy club. No test, no announcement, just enough enriched uranium and know-how to build a bomb on short notice. Iran is a nuclear threshold state, not declared but functionally nuclear. This gives Tehran new leverage and confidence in global affairs. But ambiguity breeds danger. There are no clear rules, no established lines of communication. Miscalculation becomes a constant risk. Iran's new status injects profound instability into an already volatile region. In this world, threats are implied, not stated, and a single misstep could trigger disaster. Iran's nuclear journey has been marked by ambition, defiance, and confrontation. Over decades, the nation has pursued nuclear technology, insisting on its right to peaceful energy while facing global suspicion and scrutiny. The 2015 nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, imposed strict limits and opened Iran's facilities to international inspectors in exchange for long-awaited sanctions relief, offering a rare moment of hope for diplomacy. But in 2018, the US abruptly withdrew and reimposed harsh sanctions, prompting Iran to break the deal's terms and reigniting tensions with the West. Iran responded by ramping up uranium enrichment, reaching levels far beyond any civilian purpose, raising alarms worldwide. By 2025, it had amassed enough material and advanced technology to build a bomb in mere weeks, shifting the balance of power in the region. Covert attacks by the US and Israel slowed progress, but only hardened Iran's resolve, fueling a sense of national determination. The program went deeper underground, becoming harder to monitor and more resilient against outside interference. Iran's nuclear capability soon became a powerful symbol of resistance and national pride, uniting citizens across political divides. By mid-2025, Iran was a threshold state, its nuclear status undeniable, its intentions the subject of intense debate. This technical achievement, combined with a surge of national pride, brought Iran to Stockholm as an equal, not a supplicant, demanding respect on the world stage. The world could no longer ignore Iran's capabilities, and every major power was forced to reconsider its approach. The era of ambiguity had arrived, with uncertainty clouding every diplomatic move. The stakes for diplomacy had never been higher, as every decision now carried global consequences. The nuclear shadow now loomed over every negotiation, shaping the future of international relations. Iran's return to negotiations was a calculated move, not a sign of weakness. Repeated strikes had damaged key nuclear facilities and supply chains. Diplomacy offered a pause, a chance to rebuild and fortify, away from constant attack. Talks bought time for Iran to fix technical setbacks and secure its program, but the economy was also in crisis. Sanctions had crippled Iran's finances, fueling inflation, unemployment, and public unrest. The regime needed relief to survive. A new deal could unlock billions in frozen assets and revive oil exports. Regionally, tensions with Israel were at a breaking point, while relations with Arab neighbors were cautiously improving. By returning to talks, Iran aimed to ease regional fears and reshape the geopolitical landscape. Diplomacy became a tool for security, economic survival, and regional influence. Iran was playing a sophisticated game, using negotiations to buy time, gain leverage, and shift the balance of power. Stockholm was the stage for this high-stakes strategy. Economic desperation was a driving force behind Iran's return to talks. Years of US-led sanctions had devastated Iran's economy, slashing oil exports and isolating its banks. The rial collapsed, inflation soared, and basic goods became unaffordable. Unemployment and public anger surged, threatening the regime's stability. The so-called resistance economy, smuggling and informal trade was unsustainable. The government struggled to pay salaries and maintain services. Protests erupted, revealing cracks in the regime's authority. Tehran knew it needed sanctions relief before the economy collapsed or unrest exploded. A new agreement could bring immediate cash, reconnect Iran to global markets, and stabilize the country. For Iran, diplomacy was about survival as much as nuclear policy. The stakes were economic as well as strategic. The Middle East in 2025 was a powder keg. The shadow war between Iran and Israel had escalated. Assassinations, drone strikes, cyber attacks. Each move risked all-out war. Iran's proxies provided depth but also vulnerability. Open conflict with Israel, possibly backed by the US, would be catastrophic. Iran needed to de-escalate and signal a preference for diplomacy. At the same time, Tehran was cautiously reconciling with Arab rivals like Saudi Arabia. Nuclear progress alarmed the Gulf states, but talks offered reassurance. Iran's two-pronged strategy lowered tensions with Israel, build trust with neighbors. By returning to talks, Iran aimed to fracture the coalition against it and present itself as a responsible actor. Diplomacy was central to Iran's grand strategy for regional influence. The world's response to Iran's nuclear gambit was fractured. The US wanted diplomacy, but faced fierce domestic opposition. Europe saw Stockholm as the last chance to avoid disaster, willing to offer sanctions relief for real limits. Russia and China blamed the US for the crisis, seeking to expand their influence while opposing a nuclear-armed Iran. They positioned themselves as mediators, but often sided with Tehran. Israel viewed the talks with deep suspicion, threatening unilateral action if necessary. The Gulf states were anxious but cautiously supported diplomacy, hoping to contain the threat. The global divide gave Iran room to maneuver. Stockholm became a battleground for influence as much as for nuclear policy. The stakes were global, not just regional. Inside Iran, the decision to negotiate exposed deep political rifts. Hardliners, led by the IRGC, saw the nuclear program as a shield and symbol of defiance. They distrusted the West and pushed for continued nuclear advancement. Moderates and reformists, weakened but persistent, argued for compromise to end sanctions and reintegrate with the world. The supreme leader balanced these factions, allowing talks but setting strict red lines. Negotiators had little flexibility, constrained by internal power struggles. The result, a complex, often contradictory stance in Stockholm. Every move was scrutinized at home as much as abroad. Iran's internal divisions made compromise difficult. The outcome depended as much on Tehran's politics as on international diplomacy. As the high-stakes Stockholm talks continued, The world found itself at a crossroads, facing three possible futures, each with profound consequences. The first scenario, a new, limited agreement. In this outcome, sanctions relief would be exchanged for strict caps on uranium enrichment and the return of international inspections, offering a fragile but real hope for de-escalation. While this wouldn't solve every underlying issue, it could buy valuable time, lower tensions, and reduce the immediate risk of war breaking out in the region. The second possibility, total diplomatic collapse. In this scenario, sanctions would snap back into place, covert attacks would likely intensify, and the risk of open conflict would skyrocket, threatening global stability. The third path, a prolonged stalemate. Here there would be no war and no deal, just constant tension, uncertainty, and a persistent nuclear shadow looming over the region. This unstable limbo would keep the entire region on edge, with periodic crises erupting and no clear resolution in sight, leaving millions anxious about the future. The path forward depends on political will, creative diplomacy, and compromise, qualities that are often in short supply during times of crisis. The challenge is clear. Address urgent global security concerns while accepting the new reality of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Success could mean a fragile but lasting stability. Failure, however, could unleash chaos and violence that spreads far beyond the Middle East. The world watches anxiously, waiting for the outcome of this high-stakes diplomatic gamble, knowing that the consequences will be felt everywhere. The future truly hangs in the balance, with every decision carrying enormous weight. Stockholm's outcome will echo for generations, shaping the lives of millions and the course of history. The nuclear shadow is here to stay, a constant reminder of what's at stake.